is there any such thing as a negative emotion? Some would say yes, but the truth is, if we actually allow ourselves to sit with and experience what's there, we move through it. A very small child innately does this. They feel very deeply. They let us know exactly what they're feeling. And then if we allow them to be present with that, then they move through it and they go back to their homeostasis, which is joy, right? And so in my experience, our natural state is joy. That doesn't mean we're always experiencing that necessarily, but when we allow ourselves to experience all the other things, right? Not the negative things, but just whatever's present, we actually, they organically move through us. There's information there, and that really is this deeper healing that we're talking about today.
That brings up a memory from childhood. I was about 9. And I had been put up for adoption and was with this family, and they had a little boy who was about 5. And I would see him throw a tantrum and right? And then he was fine.
Right.
And in my 9-year-old, already traumatized, repressed brain, I saw that and I was like, the fact that he can just let it out and move on, that means he was faking it. He was just doing it for attention.
Right.
Right. And God, I'm going to tear up thinking about it, because I hear this in my work so often, is when someone acts out, oh, they're just looking for attention.
Right. Right.
And we're trying to get a need met. We're trying to express and be validated.
Right.
What do you want to say about that?
Well, I mean, everything you said is so touching to me too, because I also remember being really young, and at age 7, I actually have a very clear memory of closing down. It was like everything became too painful, right? And I don't know what my brain as a 7-year-old was saying about that or what I was thinking, but there was a sensation of I needed to protect myself, right? And I think that there's truth to that. But what happened because of that is I then cut myself off from the love and connection that I truly desired. And I also started, playing this tape. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable. And also, as you said, I also decided that, I can't be so sensitive. I can't be so emotional. The phrases that come to mind are, if you're going to cry, I'll give you something to cry about. Go to your room and so you can stop crying. Here's a piece of candy. Now, some people think this might be minor, right? And for some, it could be. For others of us, that could be really significant, because what happened in my experience and what I see happening in a lot of people I've worked with in their experience is there's a message that it's not okay to be ourselves. There's a message that we need to bury things. And that right there, our little brains aren't even developed enough to understand what's happening. So it happens on an energetic level or the level of frequency. So I went from being open and effervescent and loving to closed and afraid. And I stayed that way for many, many years. And, it took me decades to be in the process of unlearning some of that.
Thank you for sharing that, TJ. Yeah, I almost feel like what parents and all of us need to learn, because we're in romantic relationships, we're kind of parenting each other. When we're in these close friendships and even with work colleagues, I feel like we all need to learn that it's important to validate and show care and compassion for these uncomfortable emotions. I don't want to call them negative emotions. They can be very uncomfortable, but
right.
Our emotions are there to actually inform us that something is amiss, that we need something that's not being met.
Right. It's an internal navigation system, right? If there's an emotion, and like you said, I like the reframe of uncomfortable, because certain emotions are pleasant to me and certain are not pleasant to me. But the truth is they all hold information, right? And I love the way you're talking about it, because I think we've been in the let's not feel that's bad, that's negative. Because as soon as I decide something's negative, then I want to get rid of it. And getting rid of the emotion isn't really the path to freedom. It really is about learning to be with myself, asking questions. I wonder what this emotion is wanting to reveal to me. I think there's this idea that if we feel it, we're going to get stuck. And the truth is, if we don't feel it, we're going to get stuck. So it's sort of paradoxical in that way, or counterintuitive at least.
Absolutely. And I do feel like I think that we need to learn as parents and as supporters for the other people in our world, we need to learn how to like validate and sit with our uncomfortable emotions and other people's uncomfortable emotions. And then if the child or the person that we're supporting is not able to move through it, if they're ruminating on it and they're getting stuck on it and adding a bunch of story, then that might be the time to say, hey, I can see that this is actually causing more distress. How would it be if we do something to distract? But not immediately going to, okay, we got to change the subject because this is uncomfortable for me, or I'm worried if you share your emotions, you're going to start crying and you'll be unconsolable, and then I won't know how to handle it, right? That I think a lot of it comes from people are pushing it away because they can't handle sitting with that emotion.
I would say probably about 100% of the time, right? Yeah. I mean, if we look, like, I think about like a child on an airplane having what we call a temper tantrum, like really emoting, the parent might go into shame, like, and try to stop the child because they're uncomfortable, is distracting people. That is a very obvious example. But what you're talking about, I think, is so important, because in so many ways, if I'm not comfortable with my own emotional inner landscape and being present with it, then I can't be that for you. And then we end up either fixing or thinking, you know, if I hand you a Kleenex or if I put my hand on you, all these things to, oh, please don't feel because it's too painful for me. You said something that I think is so important, and I wanted to kind of go back to it. You just said it in passing. It's so powerful. What story am I attaching to the emotion? That's what happens, right? So I have an emotion, and then many of us have been deeply conditioned to say, well, why am I feeling this way, right? And then we start looking at why we feel that way, or we attach a story to it. See, I'm always just going to be sad. See, you know, we go into the story. And so one tool that I use is very, very simple, but it is, what would I be experiencing without a story? Right. So look at what the sensation is and notice the mind wanting to either go into fix-it mode, get to the root of it, distract myself, and just be present with it. It's something that's happening in my body. And then I can ask questions like, I wonder what's wanting to be revealed. What might happen if I sit with this, even if it's for 1 minute or 30 seconds? For some of us, that's like an eternity, because many of us have spent decades running away from the emotions.
Mm-hmm. And gosh, that brought up a thought. Like, I kind of think that part of the reason that we start telling stories about the emotion is because our society or our childhood, we've been so invalidated so many times that we need the story to justify our feeling.
Oh, that's so true. I love that you're leaning into that, because that really is true. Then, because if I have a story about it, then I justify it, because there's some in we're swimming in this consciousness of certain feelings are acceptable and certain feelings are not.
Sending you lots of love. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe and check out one of these lovely videos. Thanks for being part of this community, and we'll see you next time.